And welcome, fellow lovers of love, on another excursion down a stream of consciousness towards the river of love and on towards the lake of peace.
I like it.
Just keeping them shorter, I think, is what my plan is. Okay, so today we've got an interesting thing. Have a conversation about, beginnings of relationships. A friend of ours who we talked about on the show before has actually found himself a relationship.
I'm so thrilled.
And so we'll talk about, there's some things to talk about in that, not specifically about him, about relationships in general. So it's just he's the one that, as lots of times, he spurs a thought, and then the thought goes off to something, and the thought's not directly related to him. So that's kind of what we're going to start. Then we've got a grab bag. We've got a bunch of questions that I kind of scoured, and we'll sit there and we'll do some chatting about those.
In an article?
No, there's no article. They're just questions. I told you they were just questions.
Gross symptoms of depression.
That's an article if we happen to get to it. That's at the end.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And there's a bunch of questions, and so we'll talk about that. So at the beginning, it's an interesting. He's a young man, mid-20s, and success in your mid-20s is a strange thing. What you've done, what you accomplished. You expect more of yourself, some people, than is realistic. This is a young man who's run for office. He's been promoted at his job. At 24, 25, he's done a lot. And so he's got a lot to offer for it. Now, apparently in the past, as we all wear that hat. At 24. When I was younger, I wasn't the best, relationship person. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, welcome to the line of humanity, dude. You're at the back of the line. That's like everybody, But you don't know that. You just know you look back and you say, man, I wish I was a better person back then. And, he takes it to heart and takes it maybe a little harsh. And so when he's talking about, how it happens when you get the young love and the puppy love, or whatever you want to call it, the
smitten,
the new rush of emotion, and you think like, oh, I don't deserve this person, I don't deserve her, I don't deserve to be this lucky. Now, there's two ways that can be interpreted. One, it can be the euphemism of love, right, where you're just kind of bubbling over, and it's not that you actually think that you don't deserve that person. You're just feeling so rose-colored glasses with that other person at the moment that you can't have a rational discussion, because it's just, there's nothing wrong with that. It's fine. Everybody does it. But the other side is that there are times when people do feel that they're not deserving. And that's dangerous, because it sets up a strange power dynamic in the relationship that the other person may not know exists. And if someone has a habit of not feeling that they are as important as they are, that they're overly flawed, and you find this person that you've got the rose-colored glasses on, and you see them as the most perfect human being ever, and you are just this low-life thing out of the gutter that they've picked up out of their blessed angel.
Well, yeah, that is dangerous.
But it's dangerous because it's hard to know the difference. It can be hard to know the difference.
Between those two. Okay.
There's some gray area there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of gray area in there where, we're all damaged human beings. And especially when you're young and you over-personalize the problems of early relationships. Because we all have trouble with early relationships. Every single person does. It's the whole, when you're young, you don't know what you're doing. And sadly, we're humans. We learn by our mistakes. And so it's very easy for somebody who doesn't feel good about themselves, who doesn't feel that they were their best selves in previous relationships, to feel like someone has essentially plucked them, like an angel's plucked them out of out of the gutter and stuck them up.
Well, I feel blessed every day, but I don't feel that you pluck me out of the gutter.
Well, I'm being a little euphemistic myself, but but the point is, it's very easy to do that. We see it all the time. That's how people get stuck in relationships. They don't feel they're worthy. I'm not. It's okay that they treat me like crap. I'm not worth more. And so it creates a mindset. And I'm not saying he's there. That's, I actually don't think so. But it did make me think about that there are people who I have known in my life who do that, who have done that, who've gotten.
Yeah, me too.
They'll take whatever human being they can take because they don't feel they're enough. And if they're lucky, they get with somebody who is kind and compassionate and actually cares for them. But those are the people who end up with predators. And it's a dangerous thing. And this is Mental Health Awareness Month, I believe. I don't pay a lot of attention to these months.
Oh gosh, I don't know.
I think so. But for us, mental health awareness is every day, so we don't really have to pay attention to the month.
To the month, really.
Yeah. And so, but it's all tied to that. Damaged human beings can see the world from a skewed perspective. They can think they're more broken than they are. They can think their behavior, their past mistakes were more fundamental than they are, rather than the fact that you've learned on them. You've viewed them as mistakes. You've moved on. You've become the better person you want to be because you've actually examined yourself and you say, I don't like that version of myself. I want to be something different. And that's the whole point. I mean, good Lord, who wants to go back and be judged by their worst moments and their worst parts of the relationship?
Not me.
Good God. I mean, even the best human beings in the world, at the worst part of their worst moments of their long-term, they're not going to be pretty.
No.
They're just not. And you hope as you get older, you become better at it, so they're less ugly. But they're never going to be pretty. It's just not how it happens. But when you're young, you don't have the experience to balance it out. That's what's so hard to be young. And then today it's hard. In a sense, it's easier today because you have more people to listen to. You have other people. It's easier to find people to talk to and to relate to. But at the same time, you see everybody who looks like they're doing fine, but they're really not. Half the people out there are struggling.
I think you're being generous.
Well,
it's been a rough year.
Yeah, but some relationships have gotten stronger. Some relationships have gotten weaker. Some have ended. But, those chances are those are going to happen anyway. Maybe it accelerated an issue. Maybe it accelerated, a connection that was going to rekindle anyway. Because they obviously cared. It may have exposed something fundamental. It may have blown away some dust that was covering flaws. But they were already there. They can only be ignored so long. We know that. You can ignore flaws for a while because long-term relationships are long-term. We'll get to it. We got another disaster to deal with. We've got, there's other things to deal with. It'll hold. But things can only hold for so long. So that's just how the world is working. It's a tough world out there, and these young people finding a relationship these days with their whole lives billboarded, essentially. They live their lives in the open, which in one sense is good. It's good to live your life open. It's freeing. But in today's culture, it's also scary.
Why?
Well, what was perfectly fine to say 5 years ago may not be perfectly fine to say now.
Uh,
And you'll be held accountable for that change, even if you've evolved with the rest of the world. If they want you to. So it's a scary time. Now, I've actually seen signs that it's turning around, so I don't want to be. I'm actually hopeful.
uh,
I'm actually hopeful that we've actually passed the darkest days, and dawn is on the way. And it's not got nothing to do with politics. It's got to do with more and more people are having conversations like me and you want to have. We're just, we're tired of the negativity. We're gonna put love into the world, whether they want it or not. And I think that's I think there's a growing sense to that. There's a growing sense that we're taking that back. Okay, so which questions? You got that list of questions over there, Levy. Which ones do you want to start with today?
well, I like the first one to start.
All right.
My mother-in-law takes my baby out of my arms without asking my permission. She also passes my baby around to other people without my permission. How do I put a stop to this behavior without hurting her feelings? Well, unfortunately, the only way this is going to be cleared up is with a frank discussion.
Yeah, you're not getting out of this one without hurting feelings. Now, one of the things you need to do is before you have the discussion is try to understand if it might be a cultural or a family thing. It's the way that family has been. That doesn't mean you don't have the right to change it because this is your baby. This is your child. But understanding where it's coming from makes the conversation go easier. Because you can look, I understand that this is a family tradition, that this is just how everybody has been, but it's coming in conflict with mine.
Yes.
And it's your mother-in-law. You're going to have to get your husband on board. Doesn't necessarily have to do it. He doesn't have to say anything. But so when you go and talk to them, you can say, look, me and Frank think this. He doesn't have to actually be part of the conversation. He just has to. You have to know that he's behind you, and you can say, we.
We, yes.
Yeah. Because we is a stronger thing than I when it comes to dealing with mother-in-laws. You need the we. Because if she doesn't want to hurt her feelings. The question doesn't sound like she's doing it like intentionally to irritate you. It's just like the way she is.
Yes.
And so you find out, okay, is this just family tradition? Is this just how the family was? Is this how her mother was? And so, okay, but times have changed. Our traditions are changing.
Well, she sounds like an over-exuberant grandma. I have been an over-exuberant grandma myself. But I've caught myself.
Yeah.
I've caught myself.
And understand.
And luckily, I have children who understand, and they give me a pass, sometimes.
Yeah, well, and that's it. Sometimes there's going to be a balance because grandmas get some privileges, and you're just going to have to figure out which privileges grandma gets. You're going to have to kind of figure that one out. Because grandmas get privilege as long as they're, not a buttheads. Grandmas get grandma's privileges. They just do.
I do.
It's just the way the world works. Unless they're, not worthy, so we say, grandmas get grandma's privileges. That's, now those privileges only extend so far, but you get to figure out which privileges those are. We get grandma time or grandpa time.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, grandpa time happens when they're older, not when they're infants. But when you start pulling quarters out their ears and things like that.
Quarters out their ears.
Well, that's what they do. And start yanking quarters out of people's ears. Okay, so you're just gonna have to have the frank discussion. So how do you have that frank discussion? You need to have the we.
Yes.
Because you have to have that discussion where it's we.
And not right in the middle of it. That's a conversation that has to be done in private, not in the middle of passing the baby.
Yeah, that's something maybe when you're, I don't know, there's some time, maybe some people have coffee with their mother-in-laws or something.
Invite her out for coffee.
Or if there's a quiet time at a picnic or family picnic or something, you're going to have to choose your time.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you don't want to be combative. So it's clearly she doesn't want to be combative. She doesn't want to. She's not saying she doesn't like the. She just kind of. Can you ask me first? And that's kind of a family thing, and you have every right to set your family traditions. Okay, we're moving on. What you got next?
It's your turn to pick.
All right, well, let's do this one. Why do 12-year-olds act like they are adults in the way they dress, the way they talk, and almost everything you do? What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts?
Well, that's the question.
They're just trying to behave like an adult. They want to be an adult. That's their whole get up. That's their whole frame of mind. They're 12. They're not babies anymore. They're on, they're starting to get hormones running through their little bodies. They want to be teenagers, hopefully, but they want to be in adult company and be accepted in adult company. I think it's part of our makeup.
Well, I think it's childhood is for practice. And in a sense, they're practicing being adults but they've been so, at 12, you're just now at 12 getting under the thing. You're at the stage where you get to start buying your own clothes, but you don't have your own style yet because your mom has been buying your clothes for your whole life, especially boys. But this really, girls don't get their own style until they're 13, 14 years old. They get their style from whatever their mom likes, whatever their mom buys them. And so, in a sense, that first stage of trying to figure out your style is trying out what the adults are wearing. You try that stuff on. It's literally a costume. They're trying it on. They're trying it out. They're going to figure out what they do like, what they don't like. On occasion, you get one. That's why you get those 13, 14-year-old boys who still wear the suit. They like wearing the dang suit. They like putting that thing on. Makes them feel good. So they keep wearing it. Most boys get this crap off of me, put me some shorts and a t-shirt. But, it's not universal. And the same thing with girls. Girls find their style. Some girls, in a sense, I was always jealous because girls get so much more interesting clothes. Not that I ever wanted to wear them, but it's just, man, you can wear pants or skirts or dresses, and 15,000 different kinds of things, and all kinds of goofy accessories. And we get shorts and shirts.
That's what you get.
That's what we get. Sure. Well, you're going to buy any other stuff? Well, no, but I don't want to wear it. But, the fact that y'all get this wide variety. And we get pockets, so I guess there's that.
And I remember as a teenage girl stressing over what I was going to wear.
Yeah, no. But we get pockets. Functional pockets. Apparently, y'all don't get functional pockets.
No.
Well, you guys don't need functional pockets.
We have purses.
Yeah, you carry a big bag around you. And every time they make pants with functional pockets for women, y'all don't buy them because they have the lines and they look ugly.
They do.
Yeah, they do. Because y'all want them tight with functional pockets. You don't work. Y'all are not understanding how pants are.
My yoga pants do.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yoga pants have pockets. That's kind of counterproductive.
I wear yoga pants all the time.
What do you put in yoga pants for pockets?
For my Kleenex, my mask.
Y'all are killing me. So kids act the way they do. Now, the way they talk and act is they're trying to communicate with their kids. You don't understand them because they're not communicating with you. They're communicating with other 12-year-olds. And they've got their own language figured out. And just feel old because you did too at 12.
Yeah, there's nothing new under the sun. This has been going on for a long time.
Yeah. the way kids talk at 12. Well, one, they're learning language, they're learning how to communicate, and they're trying to do it in their own style because every generation does. Put their own spin on it because old people are old people, boring, and you don't want to be like the old people tell you to be. So you try to find some new way to say things, and it's the way the world goes around. So kids they're just being normal kids. Don't worry about it unless it starts to get off the rails. They're just trying out. At 12, 13, 14, they're just trying stuff out. They're literally just trying things out. Let them find what they're looking for. Because they can't find it if they don't allowed to try it.
Yep, you got to try it on.
Yeah.
Keep what you like and leave the rest.
Yeah. And childhood is for practice. They're practicing.
Yeah, that's the bottom line.
They're practicing. Let them practice. You keep them safe. Let them practice in a safe way. That's what we've got to do. Make the world safe for them to practice in, not make practice safe. That's a whole different discussion. Maybe we'll do that next week. All right. Which one do you want now?
I'm a single mother who is struggling financially due to COVID. Should I charge my 18-year-old daughter rent?
Yeah, well, does she have? Well, you can
Does
charge
she
her.
have
Right?
a job? I mean, she can charge her all you want. Can she pay it?
And what's your end game? If she can't pay it, you kicking her out. And so, all right, now, theoretically, if you guys are really actually struggling, and as a single mother, we're going to assume you really are, then yes, you should help if you can. But charging rent. I've always been that the personal view is that at 18 you should be helping them get out on their own, and they're not going to help get out on their own if they have to take a huge chunk of their money that should be saving up for a deposit and some cushion and last month's rent, all that kind of stuff, if they're giving it to you.
Yeah.
Now, the roof has to be, bills need to be paid, and the roof has to stay on and all that. So there's some realities mixed in there. And then there's some you have to be careful about being taken advantage of rather than being used. But those things are easy to notice. If their savings account is getting bigger, then they're doing what you want them to do. It's really that simple. And so I guess the question is, what's your longer goal? Are you struggling where you actually need her to chip in? Then ask her to chip in. Sure. Got no problem with it. Especially if she has some money to chip in. And even if not, chip in a little bit. Hey, look, you use the damn internet a lot. Pay the internet bill. Things like that. Take some
responsibility.
Hey,
yeah.
Start buying your own dang food. I ain't cooking dinner for you anymore. You're an adult. There are some things where you can make some adjustments without having to go to the point where you're charging rent and it becomes this big thing where you're getting your chance to be flexible. I think maybe if there's one thing you want to talk about is, be flexible. You want to figure out how to be flexible. And jobs are easy to get, especially if you're young right now. They won't pay well, but they're easy to get. If you're young. Yeah. Well, unskilled labor is needed. What we call unskilled labor. Unskilled labor doesn't mean it's not required skills. It just means you need technical special training. It's not actually means you're. I had this. Irritated. I was listening to a podcast the other day. I forget who it was, and they were complaining about the term unskilled labor, about how it's dehumanizing. No, it just means you haven't needed some technical training, some specific technical training
before you start the position. Yeah,
that doesn't mean you're not a skilled human being with skills and abilities. It's the football players in the NFL and whatnot. They have skilled versus unskilled positions. It's not like the linemen you call unskilled positions. It doesn't mean they don't have skills. It's just they don't have special skills like the ability to catch. But guess what? Them receivers can't block. Well, not block the guys. Those guys are blocking. And so everybody has their set of skills. It's a way to differentiate between skills that require highly technical training and skills that can be taught essentially on the job. I can teach someone how to wash dishes. You can teach someone how to be a short order cook on the job. It may not be good for the first week, but you can teach them how to do it on the job. But you can't teach someone how to be an electrical engineer on the job.
No.
You can teach someone how to be an electrician on the job. You can apprentice and a journeyman, and you go through the process. But no one wants an apprentice electrician to be the one wiring their house. They want that journeyman watching over him, checking his work. For a reason. One mistake. You can't have a mistake. It's dangerous. And yet there's a difference between unskilled and skilled. It's skilled labor mistakes are more dangerous than unskilled. Maybe. But it's not a value judgment on your human being or even the value of the task. Some unskilled labor might be more valuable than some skilled labor. It's just a diversion. Like, a truck driver is technically an unskilled labor.
Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah, you try to back that. So go get someone in the office. Hey, can you back that truck into the dock?
That's some mad skills right there.
Yeah, those guys. All right, so let's be careful with how we use terminologies and back and forth. But back to the original question of should you charge your daughter rent? Right? That was the one we were on.
Yes.
Yeah, I forgot which question we were on for a minute. We got way off on a tangent that had nothing to do with the original question. It depends. It depends on your ultimate goal, and it depends on your genuine financial situation. If you need them to pay you some money so you can have the lights on and have a roof over your head, then you need them to pay you some money to have the lights on and the roof over your head. There's practicality. But if your goal is to be able to get them and send them off into the world in the best shape possible, then you want to be careful how much you take.
Yes.
You want to make sure they have enough money to be able to be saving. And they're not going to be perfect saving their money. They're 18. They're not going to be perfect saving their money. They're not going to make great choices that you think they should make. But as long as, generically speaking, they're saving more money than they're spending, then they're going in the right direction. Because you want them to be more successful than you are in life. And that part of that means they start out with a better foundation. And you can help. So that's kind of my theory. But it all depends on if it's available, if you can. If you can't, you can't. There's realities of life is the realities of life. We know that as well as anybody. All right, so we are going to take our short break. We'll be back here in a few minutes. And we are back for the second half of this journey. Bit of a bumpy rapids there at the end of the thing as I went off of some boulders and bounced around on to some subjects that we had no plan to cover. That was kind of fun. But I was actually thinking, as we were sitting here getting ready to do the second half of the show, I was thinking about the original topic, and it occurred to me that, not only is this a new relationship for our young friend, it's a long-distance relationship.
Ooh. You didn't tell me that little tidbit.
Well, what am I, Mr. Gossiping? I'm gossiping about a friend of mine.
Details.
I'm gossiping here about
You didn't tell me that about our friend when you initially told me. Is there any other information? Do I need to ask you that every time you tell me about things? Is there any additional information that you have?
Okay, I'm going to tell you something. I told you the information I had at the time.
Okay. All right.
Did I go out of my way to tell you new information? No, I did not. You know why? Because outside of the show, I didn't
care. But I care about this young man. He's so sweet.
Yes, no, well, I didn't mean I didn't care. I just meant it wasn't. I got other things on my mind, man. That's not what's going to come up in a conversation because those other.
You're obviously not a woman.
Well, no, I'm not.
As soon as a woman would have got that information, she would have. I got to call somebody.
Okay, but anyway, I think for Oscar in particular, for our friend in particular, it actually might be a good thing that it's a long distance relationship. It gives them time to ease into it rather than jump into it. You get time to actually have to have conversations beyond the obvious, beyond the superficial, right? Where you're just sitting around and you want to talk to them, but you don't have anything to talk about anymore. So you start talking about space and time and philosophy and all the various goofy things that are most meaningless, but yet give insights into how someone's mind works. So I just think, in a sense, it's good because of where he was at his personal growth. He's at the point where it's clearly good for him and finding a relationship. He was time. He's a man who deserves to enter that stage of his life. Clearly he does. He's deserves it. He wants it. I would almost argue he needs it. Except he doesn't, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's some purpose bigger than himself, other than himself. Men need that. Young men need that. So they can design the second, that next part of their life. And, you try to fill it with politics. 24, you can't fill it with politics at 24. So I'm happy. Happy for him. Anyway. Yeah. But the fact that it was interesting was a long-term relationship, and adding that into
a long distance
relationship. Yeah. Adding that into it, I think, was interesting. And so, if you would like to, by the way,
sometimes I think about. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to give us the plug.
Go ahead.
I was going to do the plug. If you would like to follow us, you can go to latenighlove.us, and that's our webpage. You can follow us on Twitter at JazzRack. That's me. You can send an email to Lovey over there at love@latenighlove.us. And you can always find us on Facebook, MeWe Minds. And I think that's about it for now. And podcasts, you can find our podcast on most of the popular podcast networks. If you can't find it on yours, let us know and we'll get it put on. Okay, now what was that? I'm sorry.
I think sometimes about what long distance relationships used to have to go through, before technology, just writing letters. Well, and sometimes taking a month to get them. I mean,
a month? Well, just think, it wasn't all that long ago, 1880, where they put a telegraph line across the Atlantic Ocean. It wasn't that long ago, where you could actually have any kind of real-time communication. I mean, in order to talk to England before, it took months. You wrote a letter, you put it on a boat, you sent it across the sea, you hoped it got there. You know, the guy read the letter, he wrote it back, he put it on a boat, he shipped it across the sea, he hoped it got there. And, 6 months later, you've had a conversation. But that's not a conversation. Which is why they were so good at writing letters back then, because they had to pack in so much information so short. But we forget it's really only been a little over 100 years since we've had this mass communication, electricity, and the ability to talk to each other. I mean, the telephone, where average people have telephones. You want to get this one, wrap your head around. There are places in the world that had a cell phone before they had electricity.
I believe it.
We've seen it.
We saw that documentary one time.
Yeah, we want a phone and electricity. And I'll guarantee you it was easier to give them a cell phone than the electricity. But in order to get a cell phone, they had to put a tower up there, which means they had to get some kind of electricity, which means after the tower was put up, they could run the electricity to the town.
Yay.
But they'd have cell phones powered with freaking solar power before they had wired electricity. And we forget, because, those of us were sitting here in America, Europe, any of these civilized
the
first world, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
The places with electricity versus the places without. The places with plumbing, indoor plumbing, and the places without. That's essentially where the world is divided right now. Your country either has electricity, stable electricity, and indoor plumbing, sanitation. Right? Electricity, sanitation, clean water, or you don't. And that's the difference. Luckily, things like clean water, sanitation, they're getting to the point where we don't have to have the big major infrastructure projects to do that we used to.
Oh.
We can build small solar farms that can power a town. And with the new Tesla batteries, it can charge the battery. Now, it's going to take time to get down there, but we can build little water filtration pumps now that can filter the water as they pump it out their wells. Powered by solar and battery. You can get stable water supplies to these people, because it's not like there's plenty of water in Africa. It's not where the people are. And so you need pumps and pipes. Dealing with sewer and clean water is the biggest issue in the third world. We all think it's food and everything. People aren't dying because they don't have food anymore. We've essentially wiped out starvation, hunger, levels of hunger. It happens in pockets. I'm not saying it doesn't, but in terms of the catastrophic hunger that we used to have, we don't see that anymore.
Starvation.
Yeah, go to the UN, it's clear. We've essentially ended that. On the grand scheme of things, we've ended that. So the next stage is getting sanitation, basic sanitation needs. And luckily, in a sense, solar power and batteries have come along at a good time. Those countries don't have to invest in all this old infrastructure types of infrastructure that we did. And Europe did. Big, huge, massive water projects, big, huge, massive dams and everything to get the power they need to run everything. They can essentially skip 2-3 stages of technology. If they can solve their political problems. Well, that's a political discussion. But there's hope in the world. If you look at things like abject poverty has essentially been ended in the last 20 years. It's astounding. It's literally astounding what the kind of the work we've done in the last 20, 30 years. on ending hunger and starvation. And I mean, it's not that there's not poor people who sign, a chunk of them go hungry at night. That's not what we're at. But when you're talking about that kind of massive level starvation, you and I were old enough to remember.
I remember.
Yeah.
I remember. I heard about it at the dining room table. If you don't, I didn't want to eat my dinner. Starving children in China would be happy to have that. I heard about it.
Yeah, starving children in China, starving children in Africa.
Okay.
There were starving children in the Soviet Union. We didn't hear about those, but there were starving children in the Soviet Union. And we don't hear that. Doesn't happen in that mass scale. It happens in pockets. And it happens because of political issues, not actually because we can't get food to them. We can't get food to them, not because we don't have food or the ability to get food to them or the desire to get food to them. There's political reasons we can't get food to them. And so that's a different thing. So the world is a better place, filled with love. We don't do that without love. And we don't appreciate it. We see what's happening and we say, this is awful, and it is, but we forget how far we have come. Like a lot of people talk about, environment. We haven't done anything to save the environment. That's not true. We've done a lot. 40 years ago, I'd walk to school. You could literally see the air. My city has grown humongously since then, 10 times bigger now than it was then. And the air on most days cannot be seen. It's a very rare day where you can see the smog in the air. So anyway, my point is we made a lot of progress. Doesn't mean we don't have farther to go. Doesn't mean we don't want to go farther. It just means we should take a time and stop and say, we've actually done pretty good. All things considered. From where the human animal came from to where we are today, the path we've actually done pretty good. So stop being so hard on ourselves. Pat yourselves on the back for the accomplishments and for how farther we've come, and say, okay, tomorrow we have to be better. Both can be true. We seem to forget that both can be true. Both these things are possible. It's true. All right, so where are we at? What do we have left? What we got? The 13-year-old child. My 13-year-old child get used to living with 4 younger cousins. My husband and I left her in the U.S. with my sister to work in Bora Bora. We'll be back in 6+ years. My sister says my daughter isn't adjusting to living with other kids. Well, yeah, it's because you're in freaking Bora Bora and she's in some town, USA. I'd be mad too. Parents off living in a freaking tropical island and you're stuck
with your cousins. You have to share everything.
Locked in the house during a pandemic, so it's not like you can even go outside. Stuck with these little nutheads. Yeah, she's not happy. Will she adjust? Maybe. It's hard to say. There's no way to know. It depends how good of a parent your sister is. Because sadly, you've now made your sister her parent. I don't understand. Maybe there's a reason you can't take them to Bora Bora with you.
But for 6 years?
Yeah. She's going to graduate high school before you're back.
That's a large chunk of their childhood.
That's going from that 12-year-old teenager to adulthood. That's a major... That's the most dangerous time in a child's life, because that's when you have to let them start having freedoms. That's when they're most dangerous. That's when they start having to make choices for themselves. And you want one that's rebelling? Deliberately making bad choices? That's what rebelling is. It's you deliberately making bad choices. Trust me, I know. I know all about that. But will she adjust? Maybe. Depends on the family she's with. Depends on if the. But man, if it were me, I'd find a way to get her to Bora Bora. Or I'd come home.
Yeah, it's that important.
Now, there are caveats to that. Maybe they have an insanely important job. Maybe they're saving the world somehow, or part of a team that's, doing investigative work for things that we don't want to discuss here, and it's maybe the sacrifice is worth it. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and be overly judgmental. I'm just saying, if it were me, I can't imagine, other than something like, no, look, I'm trying to track down a lost nuclear device someplace, and I can't have you here with me. And you just, there's you can imagine some things. Because there are people that have to do that, right? There are people who have to work as spies, and there are people who have to, join the witness protection programs and all those various kinds of things, who have to work undercover for drug enforcement. Whether we agree with those decisions or not, there are people who have to do that. And if you're working undercover for DEA in Bora Bora, do you want your teenage daughter there?
That's an extreme case.
But this is an extreme situation. For me, it's an extreme situation. The only thing I can think of is that there's an extreme reason.
There's an extreme reason. Okay, all right.
Now, the reason is probably wrong, but my particular thing. But I can't imagine that it's just some normal job that pays some relatively normal wage, and in Bora Bora, and you can't take them. Me and my sister, give her to my sister. Where you both have to go to Bora Bora. There's got to be something out there.
Yeah, both? I don't get it.
Yeah, there's information that we don't have that might make this make sense.
Yes.
On the surface, this don't make any goddamn sense.
No.
Unless it's just, you don't want to raise your child. And you'd rather go to Bora Bora and live your life in Bora Bora. And since your sister is willing to buy the excuse you gave her, I'd like to think that there's something extreme situation that's the reason that they're working for the DEA. They both work for the DEA or something, and they just don't want to take her for safety. But they're dedicated, and you know how people like that can be. So I prefer that. I prefer to think of that rather than it's these people who just
they don't want to be parents anymore.
Yeah. Well, it's not, yeah. Or I can go to Bora Bora and be a tourist guide on boats, which means I'm going to be well, she's 13 in Bora Bora. Leave her alone for a few days. Tell her to lock the door. It's freaking Bora Bora. What the hell? So I don't know. But again, there's probably something we don't know, and so I'd prefer to think that it's that rather than. Okay, is it reasonable to not let my 14-year-old daughter go to her friend in the afternoon and spend the night in my adoption? Well, the thing is her friend a male friend? I'm assuming if it was a male friend, she would have said a male friend.
Right.
Because, I mean, if she's that kind of picky. But because if it's a male friend, well, then no. At 14, no, you don't get to spend overnight at your friend's house, even if you've been friends since you were 4. I'm sorry, you don't. Hormones, it's a bad thing. You just don't. But you can't get any trouble. 2 14-year-old girls can't get into trouble. They can play with each other, but they can't get into any trouble.
What are they going to do? Do their hair, do a mask, pedicures?
Well, at 14, you're having all kinds of hormones and explorations thoughts. So, but what's the worst that's going to happen? Two 14-year-old girls that can have fun with each other, but they're not going to get into
They're
any
not going to get in any trouble.
Two 14-year-old boys can play around with each other, but they're not going to get into any trouble. I'm just saying, there's a reason we keep at that age. We don't let them spend the nights together. That's all.
But is an afternoon and an evening
yeah.
too long?
Oh no, but she was talking about spending overnight. If a girl, no, what, you never sent at 14-year-old, your girl's never gone over to her girlfriend's house for a weekend? You never had her off?
Apparently not.
Good Lord.
She's 14. She's ready.
You dang well better have her go. I would encourage you to let her go. Yes, I understand you're a helicopter parent. It's going to be tough. You're going to have to be sitting on your hands. Call the other person's parents. Say, look, I'm really going to be nervous this whole time. Do you mind if I kind of quietly call you every now and again? They'll likely be perfectly fine if you explain that you're just overly nervous. It's fine. Most parents are perfectly understandable. But for her own mental health, she's got to start doing things on her own. At 14, she's got to start being able to make her own choices, make decisions. Some of them will be wrong. Some of them will not turn out well. And then she'll have to learn how to clean up her messes. And that's just part of growing up. Part of learning how to become an adult. One of the most interesting times was one of my sons. He was having trouble in school. He failed a couple classes.
Oh, I remember this.
And so I said, hey, what's going on? Because, he's one of those who doesn't usually have those problems. And so I said, so what's going on? What happened? He says, well, I screwed off and I just didn't do what I needed to do. I says, okay, do you need some help? Was there any problems? No. It was just me. So you can take care of it. Yeah, I'm going to take care of it. Okay. And I left him alone. And then a couple years later, after everything was done, he comes back and says, I really want to thank you for letting me do that on my own.
He did?
Yeah. He came back and he thanked me for letting him do it on his own. Letting him fix his own problems. So it wasn't just, at some point he understood that, it wasn't the failures that were the problem, that was the issue. He learned more from having to fix his own problems, having to go through and figure out, okay, here's where I screwed up. Here's what I did. Here's how I can fix it. And he did it all on his own. Now, I was there. I told him, if you need me, I'm right here. Just, me. We talk about everything in this house. And so, but no, he didn't need me. And I knew he didn't need me. I knew all he needed to do was to hold himself accountable. And I gave him that opportunity. Look, they're teenagers. They will skip accountability to themselves if they can. So all your job as a parent is not to hold them accountable to you. It's to hold them accountable to themselves. Because they're going to leave you. They can't have you over and over and be the ones holding them accountable their whole lives. They have to hold themselves accountable. And you don't want them to have to learn that at 35, 40 years old. If you can help them do that at 18, you're doing a huge favor for them. And, life gives you opportunities to do that. You don't have to make it up. You just, love, compassion, understanding, observation, and then taking advantage when it, luck is preparation mated with opportunity. We had built a long relationship over time. So when the opportunity came to interject myself, and I interjected just enough for him to for him to realize that I have to hold himself accountable. He has to fix it because then he wants to fix it, and Yeah, there's a handful of times when you go, I did something right as a parent. You take them and you wear them and you hang them up like a platter in your head. You know, it's like a trophy cabinet.
Plaque.
It's a plaque on the trophy cabinet of your head. I did one right. Well, because a lot of times you don't know for 30 years whether you did stuff right. That's the tough thing. Wrapping your head around that as a parent is probably the hardest thing as a parent, is trying to wrap yourself or head around that. All right, so we got 5 minutes left. We'll end this with the last short one. Have you ever accepted a job offer only to be bitterly to regret taking the job later once you'd started? What happened? Well, yeah, I've done that many times. I just leave. So, I don't care. No one cares.
I tried to make it work.
No, if something's not going to work, you just leave. Because you're wasting everybody's time. Especially yours. It's not their time I care about, it's mine. I'm wasting my time. You're doing everybody, if you're going to be miserable, you're not going to be a good employee ever. And then you're going to be miserable. Why wouldn't you just go get a different job? Why do you want to be someplace that makes you miserable? Now, I get it. There's times when it's difficult to get into other jobs. But, if you're young right now, it's not one of them. And no one cares. If you go up, well, how do you explain it? One, you don't tell them. You don't put it on your resume. No one knows you had it. You don't put a job you spent 3-4 days on. It's not really a job. If you got it through a temp agency, then you work for the temp agency and you did these kind of jobs if they ask. But at these places. But everybody knows those are short-term jobs. No one cares if you only worked there 3 days. They just assume the contract was only for a couple of days.
Right.
So these things, leaving a job is not the problem as long as you have an explanation for it. And even if that explanation is it was a terrible work environment. This is how you say that is what they're looking for. How do you tell them that you left because it was a terrible working environment?
How do you say that?
Well, if you're me, you say it was a terrible working environment. I didn't want to work there. But if you're a normal human being, you sit there and say, it wasn't a cultural fit.
That's a good one.
And they'll ask you what you meant, and then you can kind of worm your way through it. Because you don't want to badmouth it. You want to be able to know that you can be able to go through a conversation about a bad experience without badmouthing. If you want to have success in an interview. That's what they're looking for most places. I mean, depending upon that specifics. But if you're an average person, there's lots of people who can do the job, who can do the skills, right? You've got to assume there's 100 people who are competent enough to do the job. So what makes you different? That's what you have to think of when you go into an interview. What makes you different? Especially if you're going if you're trying to work at some retail store or Target or the grocery store or just a regular warehouse job. There's 100 people who can do the job just as competent as you. You're not special. So what makes you different? Now, they won't ask you that question, but that's what they want to know. They can't ask you that question, but that's what they want to know. And in a sense, you want to go back to your relationships and find relationships. It's what makes you different. Why should I love you rather than that other person who I was kind of interested in? What makes you different? What makes you special? What makes me want to love you? What makes me put those damn rose-colored glasses on every day? Why do I put those on for you and I don't put them on for other people? Don't contemplate that question too long. Just don't, because you'll go down a rabbit hole that never ends. I'm just saying. Because that's a bad rabbit hole to go on. Think of the meaning of time before you go do that. But, superficially ask the question. Why do we do these? Why do we, as these human species, treat love the way we do? And it's not unique to our time or place. It goes back to as long as we have human written records. And if it goes back to as long as we have human written records, it goes back longer than that. These feelings and emotions didn't creep up 5,000 years ago when we started to learn to scratch things on the walls. 10,000 years ago, we learned to scratch pictures on walls. They existed before that. Those are the representations of something much more fundamental. The evolutionaries. And I'm an evolutionary. I believe in evolution. Natural selections, they think you choose. But how does love play into that? How does this goofy thing we call love play into kind of natural selection and evolution? Don't know. It's hard to imagine the caveman, building a relationship based upon love. But you know what? I bet you they did. I bet you it's that fundamental. Because it goes too deep, crosses too many cultures, crosses too much time. And speaking of time, that is all the time we have. You can catch us at latenighlove.us. You can send us a message at anchor.fm/latenighlove. Click the message button and send us a voice message. You can send Lovey an email at love@latenighlove.us. You can find me on Twitter at JazzRack, or you can find us on all your various social media pages. And from me and Lovey and all of us over here, good night. And please remember, love everybody.
Good night.